This first video will just go through the conversions or the converting of percentages, decimals and fractions. I'll make another video or two to go through finding an amount, reducing and increasing, and some real life applications from our PowerPoints. So we will just concentrate on converting initially. Just a reminder that your conversions table on page 140 of your textbook. I guess by grade 8 we assume that you can recall definitely that one, okay, definitely this one, definitely this one, and definitely this one. Okay, they should kind of be, I guess, common knowledge or foundation knowledge for you by this stage of your maths journey. This one and this one, okay, you should know them, and your teachers have spent some time with you explaining, I guess, the fact that this is a recurring decimal and the decimal goes on forever, and explaining that that recurring decimal is why our percentage looks a bit different to the others in both of these cases. So that's your recurring decimal. The dot means that the 6 goes on forever, which links up to the 2/3 fraction part of your percentage. I guess that one there is a little bit different as such. I haven't used that one a lot with our teaching, but the ones with the ticks most definitely, and by this stage you should be able to comprehend the 1/3 and the 2/3 conversions as well. Okay, so we made up some questions just to see that even though you have a conversions table here, they are more going to help you with some of your problem solving questions. But you should be able to convert almost any fraction, percentage or decimal through, and we give you ones that you can do without a calculator. So 5/25. I made up an extra column to help you see the direct link between percentage and decimal. So if you look at 25 as your denominator, you have to recognize that that can be turned into 100 as a denominator if you multiply it by 4. So if you've multiplied the 25 or the denominator by 4, you have to do the same to the top. So 5 times 4 is 20. As soon as you've got 20 out of 100 looking at you, hopefully you very quickly realize that it's then 20%, because percent means per 100. That's why I thought these two would help each other. Percent means per 100. Okay, and then your 2 and your 0 are your decimal, because this is your tenths column and this is your hundredths column. Hence it's 20, I guess, out of 100, but as a decimal. Alright, so if we look at 30 out of 100, a lot of students might come straight over here and recognize that as 30%, or 0.3 tenths and 0 hundredths for your 30%. And then we can look at the fact that this can be simplified. Some of these are in their simplest form. That could be simplified further, but this can go back a bit smaller and it can become 3 tenths. Alright, 64%, 0.64 here, okay, which means it's 64 out of 100. So maybe as a starting point you could recognize that it can go down initially as to 32 over 50. Alright, but then hopefully you can see that they're both even numbers. 32 and 50 are even, so they can be divided by 2. Okay, they can both be divided by 2. 16 times 2 is 32. 25 times 2 is 50. Looking at this one, I can see that this one can go down a little bit further. Okay, but if you look at 50 or 25, they can both be turned into 100. So if you looked at your 50, you would go 50 multiplied by 2 with these numbers, and that would become 12 out of 100. Same thing here, but if you multiplied this by 4, it's going to get you to 100, and 3 times 4 is going to give you your 12. Alright, we might fill in that one. Okay, 12 is in your tenths, and the 1 is in your tenths and the 2 is in your hundredths. Just skip down to the last one here, 0.45. So we're just making sure you can start from all different points within the table. That's going to become your 45%. That's going to become 45 out of 100, and 45 can be divided by 5. Okay, so 9. So if you go back this way, it can be divided by 5, and when you get that answer, it can be times by 5. But 100 divided by 5 is 20. Okay, so this time you have to work out what you can divide by, since you're making it smaller and going back. Okay, so if you have big things and you're sharing them out or dividing them, they will become smaller. If you have the smaller starting point, you need to work out what to multiply to get it to the bigger 100. Okay, but these two columns just complement each other, and it's more that this column out of 100 should make your percent column and then your decimal column really easy to see. Alright, answers down the bottom there. So I just did these ones a little bit separately because I just wanted to make sure that when you turned it into, that's going to be times by 4, so it's still going to be a small number of 8 out of 100, 8%. Now the big thing I wanted to show students on this slide is that it's 0.08. We don't want students to make the mistake of saying 0.8 because that is wrong. Okay, hopefully you can see that that actually equals 80%, which is very different to 8%. So we just wanted to emphasize here the importance of putting your decimals and your zeros correctly. Alright, so if you come down here, you've got to work backwards here. It's become 2%. 2 out of 100, percent means per 100, and we can see that it can go down a little bit smaller. Oh, 1. Okay, let's start with this one. It's obviously your 3%, and the big thing to emphasize on this slide is your decimals and your zeros, and that one can't actually go down any further. Okay, all your answers are down the bottom as well. It's just talking through what the emphasis of that slide was, and the emphasis of the slide was putting that 0 in just there. So for 6% you have to put your 0 in, because then the 6 is in your hundredths column. Okay, the next slide with basic conversions is we looked at things that were over 100%. So we needed students to realise that things can be over 100%. And the example I gave was when shops buy items, and they buy items at a price for $20 each. If they take them back to their shop and try to sell them at $20 each, they're not going to make a profit. So you have to mark up and make things in your shop that you sell over its full price that you paid for it at the warehouse. So shops have to mark their items up over 100% to make a profit. Okay, so we talked about the fact that here is an improper fraction, and to times it by 2, just like we did before, to get it to something more helpful. Okay, it's an improper fraction, but just because it's improper, it doesn't mean it's incorrect. Improper just means that the denominator is bigger than the numerator. Sorry, the numerator is bigger than the denominator, or it's top heavy. Okay, we talked about top heavy, and that it's not incorrect, it's just called improper. Okay, so then that would be 140%. We talked about the fact that this is a whole cake that you ate, so one whole, and the 40% is, you know, close to half, but your decimal of that would look like the 0.4. Okay, so the decimal would look like the 0.4, and the 100% is the whole. Okay, maybe one more of those. So we'd have to times that by 10, and it looks very improper, very top heavy at 370 over 100. So it would be 370%. So this is your whole, and then here is your decimal part of that percentage into a decimal. Now these out of the textbook, you know, worthwhile practicing just some of the basics. So a quarter as a decimal, hopefully you're just knowing that that's 0.25 and it's 25%. Okay, I'm not going to go through all of these, but these are just really good revision. See if you can call on your basics. 4 out of 4 as a decimal, it's going to be 1.00, and that'll be 100%. Okay. So your 40% be 0.4, and that's going to be 4 out of 100. Out of 100, sorry. 40 out of 100, which is going to be 4 out of 10, which could be 2 out of 5. I'm not sure if the textbook has your 40 out of 100 or if it simplifies it. Most fractions get simplified. Okay, those boxes are a bit small, so 5 out of 40. 5 out of 40, I guess you're going to times that by 2.5. That one's a bit tricky without a calculator, student, so you actually have to multiply it by 2.5, because if you multiply 40 by 2, okay, you get to 80, and then half of 40 is 20, and you can see that that gets you to 100. So this one and this one looks a bit tricky as well. But if you times 5 by 2.5, 5, 2.5, okay, you're going to get you get your 12.5 out of 100, okay, and you get 12.5%. Okay, so this can be 0.15 going back. So it's going to initially be 15 out of 100, but that could get simplified. Divide them by 5, you see, so it's going to be 3 out of 20 if you divide these by 5. Okay, might leave it there because it's up to 13 minutes on the video, and they take a little time to upload if they get too long. But those are good practice ones. Like that 119 one, that's great. So that's your 1.19. Remembering this is your whole number, and this is your decimal. Okay, and as a fraction, it could be 119 over 100. I'm not sure, your textbook might take that into a mixed number. So that's your 119 over 100. You know, if you put that in the test, I'd be accepting of that, because it's what we call our improper fraction. Whereas your textbook might give it as a mixed number. Now we've just got to sometimes remember the focus of what our test is. Our test isn't fractions and really focusing on mixed numbers, improper fractions. Our test is just, can you convert between these different formats? So if you left it as an improper fraction in your test, that would be fine. Okay, I'll just leave it there.